Good morning, everybody. Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim, and now we could say also good morning or good evening to our friends around the world. And it's a real honor to be able to share a shiur. I like that, to share a shiur with all of you and with all of us. And we're going to start Tanya Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. And we did already the introduction, so now we'll be able to hopefully start from the beginning of the text. The text should be on our page, but if not, you might have your own Tanya, and it's also good to listen along. You can also find the text on our website, JerusalemChabad.org, and on our Hebrew website, JerusalemChabad.com. And let's start. And so at the end of or the bulk of chapter 40, Perek Mem, the Alter Rebbe discussed the difference between learning Torah and observing the mitzvot with ahava v'yira, with love and fear of Hashem, as opposed to doing Torah and mitzvot without love and fear of Hashem. They're all important. It's not like which one is more important. The question is, what is the purpose of each one? And so he compares it based on what the Zohar says. He compares it to a bird which flies. So the bird itself is the Torah and the mitzvot, the bones, the meat, so to speak, and the skin. The bird itself is the learning Torah and observance of the mitzvot. And then you have the wings that help it fly up. That's the Ava V'yira, that's the love and fear of Hashem. And so, obviously the thing itself is the Torah and Mitzvot, that's the most important thing. But you want to lift it up. You don't want it to stay down here. You want it to lift it up and to bring it to Hashem, to elevate all of our effort that we've done. And so that can be done through love and fear of Hashem. It reminds me of the story of the Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov came to a shul once. It's known that he used to travel around from town to town and do different concepts of service of Hashem. And he came to a town, he came to a shul, and he said, wow, this shul has a tremendous amount of tefillah, has a tremendous amount of fear of Hashem. It's so packed with the fear of Hashem, that it's so packed with the prayer, with davening, that there isn't really room for anything else, for anyone else. And he explained afterwards that the davening never elevated above. In that specific shul, they were so full of themselves and not focused on the love and fear of Hashem that the davening never really elevated. It all stayed down there. So it sounded to be that it was a compliment, but it wasn't necessarily a compliment, because there was the reason why it was still there. It was there because it had not elevated above. So getting back to our subject, this chapter 41, is going to discuss the subject of Ava and Yira, love and fear of Hashem. You see, usually when it comes to fear and love of anything or anyone in this world, it's usually either or. Either you fear a person or you love a person. It's really hard for there to be both. If you have the concept of fear, for example, a king or a boss, an employer, or any other scenario, or an animal which is ferocious, and you fear, you're petrified. So in any of the above, you're usually not going to be able to have a feeling of love for that individual. Who would love a king? How could you love a king? The king, his just mentioning his name sends shivers through everyone in the country. You can't come within a 5-mile radius from his royal palace, and so on and so forth. Especially in the real kings, like in France and Russia of hundreds of years ago. Those were real examples of Yirat HaMelech, of Ema, of fear. And on the other hand, love. Yeah, when you love someone in your family, or you love a good friend, so then you're not usually going to fear that individual. On the contrary, the love is an expression of closeness, and fear is an expression of distance. So when it comes to Hashem, we have both mitzvahs. We have a mitzvah to fear Hashem, we have a mitzvah to love Hashem. How is it possible to do both? If you look in the Rambam, the beginning of the Rambam, and the way he enumerates the mitzvot, the 613 mitzvot, so you have both mitzvahs, a mitzvah to love him and mitzvah to fear him. How is that possible? So that's really the objective of this parak. Very, very fundamental parak, very fundamental chapter, parak Mem Aleph. And the point of the explanation is going to be, obviously there's a lot of elaboration, but just the point is that Am Yisrael is called Banim, children, and we are also called Eved, Avadim, servants. Generally speaking, if we look at the Am Yisrael, the way we're called children, then the relationship between children and parent is more of a close relationship and a loving relationship. We're also considered Avadim. We're also considered servants, slaves, so to speak. That's more of a fear, more of a distant relationship. Speaking about Pesach, we went out of Mitzrayim, where we used to be slaves, servants of Paro, and we went out of Mitzrayim, and now we became slaves of Hashem. As Hashem himself told Moshe Rabbeinu the first time that Moshe experienced revelation of godliness at the burning of the sneh, the burning bush, Hashem told him, "Ba'otziacha et ha'am mitzrayim." When you will take Am Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, ta'avdun et ha'elokim al har hazeh. You will serve Hashem, you will serve me, Hashem said, on this mountain, which later became Har Sinai. And so the purpose of going out of Mitzrayim was not only the concept of being free. What's freedom? True freedom is subservience to Hashem. That's true freedom. And so Eved, being an Eved, being a slave to Hashem, is very pertinent to this time in which we find ourselves right now. The Chag of Pesach. And in the course of this parak, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be learning about what it means to be both a ben, a child of Hashem, and also an Eved, also a servant, a slave of Hashem. So we asked in the beginning, how is it possible to have both love and fear, to both be a child and to be a servant? And the answer is, if you're talking about a human being or a finite creation of Hashem, true, it might be very difficult to have both. Either you're like this or you're like that. Either you have this feeling or that feeling. But when you're talking about Hashem, Hashem is unlimited. And when we turn to Hashem, Hashem is not just a king. Hashem is not just a father. Hashem is unlimited. And so therefore, we can fear him and we can love him at the same moment. Moreover, because we are Am Yisrael and we are so strongly connected to Hashem, we also have this unlimited power of being able to have two different, perhaps two opposite feelings simultaneously. On the one hand, to love Hashem, on the other hand, to fear Hashem. And in fact, these two mitzvahs are one of the 6 mitzvot temidiyot, constant mitzvot. There are 6 mitzvahs that we have to at every single moment, and that's love and fear of Hashem are 2 of those 6 mitzvot. So it is possible. The more we connect to Hashem, the more we elevate ourselves from being regular human beings, and we lift ourselves up to be closer to Hashem, to be more connected and bonded with Hashem, we have the power, we have the ability to have both ahava and yira, love and fear, a child and a servant, both. As we say in the davening in Rosh Hashanah, right after we hear the shofar, Im kebanim, im kavadim, im kebanim rachameinu kerachem aval banim, v'im kavadim eineinu lecha tluyot, ad shetechanenu v'totzichar mishpateinu ayom kadosh. Im kebanim, if like children, im kavadim, if like servants. How do you look at us, Hashem? Whether you view us like children or you view us like servants, accept us. Accept the call of the shofar. Accept our outcry from the depths of our hearts. Because there's no limitation. We can have both, and you can accept us as both, and we're on the same page, and Bezrat Hashem, you'll give us all of the brachot. Amen. Now let's open up our Tanyas to Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. Okay. Perek Mem Aleph. As always, we'll read some of the Hebrew and then we'll translate into English. Perek Mem Aleph. Biram, however, tzarich liyot lizikaron tamid. There has to be always a remembrance. We always have to remember. Reishit ha'avodah, the beginning of the avodah, v'ikara v'sharsha, and the main part of it and the source, the root of the avodah, of the service of Hashem. In other words, obviously we have to learn Torah and do mitzvot. It's all important. All of the above is great. But when you have a building, you have to have a strong foundation. And the foundation keeps the building strong. What is the foundation of the service of Hashem? Reshit ha'avodah, the beginning of the avodah. V'hu, and that is, let's continue in the text. Ki af shahayira hi shoresh l'sur meira, that even though fear of Hashem is the root of going away from any bad, sur meira, the ha'ava, and the love of Hashem, levasei tov, to doing good. Afal pikein, nevertheless, lo dai, it's not enough. Lo orer ha'ava levada levasei tov. It's not enough to awaken the love alone before you do good, before you do a positive mitzvah. Obviously, it's the love which brings us to a positive mitzvah, and it's the fear which helps us refrain from, God forbid, violating any of the mitzvahs of Hashem. Ulefachot, let's continue, ulefachot, and at least, tzarich le'orer tchila, first, one has to awaken hayir'ah hativ'it, the natural fear, hamesuteret, which is hidden, belev kol Yisrael, in the hearts of every Jew, in the heart of every Jew. Shalolim rod, not to go against, b'melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu kanal, not to go against Hashem, the King of all kings. Shetehei b'hitgalut libo o mocho, that this hidden fear should be revealed at least in his heart, or at least in his mind. The hainu, which means lihitbonen, to contemplate, the machshavto, in his thought, al kolpanim gdulat ein sof baruch Hu, the greatness of Hashem, umalchuto, and his kingdom, asher hi malchut kol olamim, which is the kingdom of all worlds. Elyonim v'tachtonim, the upper worlds and the lower worlds. V'ihu memalik kol almin v'sovev kol almin, and he fills all the worlds and surrounds all the worlds. In other words, what we have over here, the Alter Rebbe is alluding to the following concept. True that we have a mitzvah to fear Hashem and to love Hashem. Nevertheless, there are, generally speaking, two types of fear. There is the fear that we're talking about now, to awaken yourself and to make the fear of Hashem on a great level. That's very, very special. However, there is a hidden fear, yir'ah ha'mesuteret, a hidden fear within each and every one of us. And before we start working to build and to elaborate on bringing ourselves to high levels of fear of Hashem, we have to first start with the basics. We have to first start with the foundation, the root. All of the buildings of fear that we're going to build and we're going to elevate ourselves is all based on the foundation, on the root. The root is that yirah hativit, that natural fear that Hashem has implanted within each and every one of us. That's what we have to focus on. Number one, the greatest level. And then we read that we have to think about the fact that Hashem is the king of all worlds, Elyonim, the upper worlds, v'tachtonim, and the lower worlds, v'ihu memalik kol almin v'sovav kol almin, and he fills all the worlds and surrounds all the worlds. We need to explain what these two concepts are. What does it mean that Hashem fills all the world and surrounds all the world? You see, first I'll explain, and then we'll give an example or two, and then we'll get back to the subject. Ezrat Hashem. There are two ways the way Hashem influences the world. After all, Hashem created the world, and Hashem continues to create the world, all of the worlds. So there are generally two methods, two ways how Hashem does this. On the one hand, Hashem fills the world. Hashem fills the world with His greatness, and it's not always possible to see Him, but because He creates everything, He finds Himself, He is found within every object in the world. So that's Memalik Kol Almin. As we say in the davening, and we learn elsewhere, Melo Kol Haaretz Kvodo. Hashem's honor fills the entire world. There's another way how Hashem expresses Himself and influences the world, and that's called Sovev Kol Almin. Literally surrounding the worlds, hovering over the worlds. In other words, there's a light of Hashem which comes down into the world and is sort of on the level of the materialistic objects, and also on the higher worlds on their own levels. But then there's a level of godliness which is so high, is so exalted, that it literally hovers over the world. It cannot come into the world. It cannot fill the world, because this light of Hashem is beligvul, is unlimited, and by nature, the level of unlimited cannot merge with limitation, because this is higher than limitation. So therefore, the closest that it can come to the world is by hovering over it, by surrounding the world, the worlds. It cannot come and permeate the worlds. The goal, the objective is, eventually, through the fact that we learn Torah and do mitzvot in this world, we elevate even the material objects, and then hopefully we'll be able to merge that this world will be on the level of Ein Sof. But until then, there are two different concepts. There's the level which comes above the world and hovers over. It cannot come inside. And then there's a quote-unquote lower level of godliness which fills the world. Either way you cut the cake, Hashem created and creates the world and is personally involved. In each scenario, He has His own way of connecting. But Hashem is very strongly connected with the world. And so, when you're talking from a human perspective, it's much easier to start with Memalik Kol Almin, the level of godliness which fills the world. You look around, and you see the trees right in back of me, and you see buildings, and you see cars, and you see, wow, look at the world. You see people and the organism, how Hashem creates everything. It's unbelievable. So even though we might not see Hashem clearly, but you just have to think for a half a minute, and you'll realize, wow, this is unbelievable how Hashem creates the world. That's Memalik Kol Almin. Sovev Kol Almin is a little bit more removed from us, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist in order to open your eyes and to realize that Hashem also controls the world, inspires the world, influences the world from a higher level. But you need to have a little more contemplation into that. You need to learn several hours of Chassidut to open up our eyes, that we should be able to see more and more how Hashem influences us from above. Sovev Kol Almin. Just to give an example, you have a car. What gives energy to the car? There are different methods, whether you're talking about the battery or you're talking about the gasoline. Battery is more of a long term, the gasoline is more of a short term. But when you infuse the car with a level of life, of vitality, then that gives the car energy to run. That would be an example of memale kol almin, of filling the world. That when there's something, an energy which comes inside, and that allows the vehicle to be able to move, to run. So the vehicle has within itself, fills itself, so to speak, with different types of energy. And that would be memale kol almin. But then we have something called sovev kol almin. And sovev kol almin, I would suggest that would be, I don't know if it's like this or it's supposed to be like that, but just as an example off the top of the hat, the way government is supposed to, I believe, run the country. Not to be too involved, but to be there as a backup, to be there as a daddy, to be there just from on top, to make sure that things run properly. But who is supposed to do their jobs? Who is supposed to do work and effort and build families and build businesses and build the world? That's the regular citizen. That's what we have to do. Every person in your own profession, in your own talents that Hashem gave us, that Hashem gave you, we need to do the work. The government is supposed to be just on top, just to make sure, like in times of emergency, perhaps like as we're in now, maybe to kick in a little bit. But they shouldn't be involved in day-to-day. We shouldn't rely on them. That's sovev kol almin, from above. And so, moving on to the subject, these are two types of hitbonanuyot, of contemplation into Hashem's greatness. Whether we think about Hashem as being memale kol almin, melo kol haaretz kavodo, filling the world, and every single thing, every item, the fact that it's able to move is all Hashem. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, that even if you see, sometimes you see a leaf falling down from a tree, and you think, just whatever, it was a wind, it was by chance. But every single thing is planned by Hashem. It's not just like He's above, and down here, whatever happens by chance. God forbid. Every single item in the Ein Sof, billions, zillions of items that happen, within every step of our day, everything is personally managed by Hashem, overlooked by Hashem. That's Melok Kol Haaretz Kavodo. And when a person thinks about that, then it naturally awakens us and hopefully inspires us to be able to become closer to Hashem with love and fear of Hashem. But then we have step number 2. Then we have the sovev kol almin. We have the thoughts about Hashem, how Hashem hovers over the world, protects the world from above, and looks upon us, shines His countenance upon us. That's sovev kol almin. That needs a little more hitbonanut, and a little more contemplation. It's a little more removed from us, but that's okay. The more Chassidus we learn, the more we'll be able, Be'ezrat Hashem, to connect to the sovev kol almin of Hashem. And then the Alter Rebbe quotes the verse, which says as follows: O k'moshe katuv, halo et hashamayim v'et haaretz ani maleh. Isn't it true? Hashem says that I fill the heavens and the earth. In other words, this verse, filling the earth, is of course memale kol almin. But even the heavens, which seem to be removed, Hashem is involved with the heavens, which is the spiritual worlds, the ta'aretz, and the physical, materialistic world. Hashem is all over. And when we think about this hopefully will inspire us that the fact that Hashem is here with us is literal. And soon we're going to read the verse, the statement, V'hine Hashem nitzav alav. And we talked about this a few times last week. That Hashem stands upon every single person and watches us deep down and sees what we're doing, sees what we're thinking. If we say these few lines of Tanya every single day, as the Rebbe would encourage before davening, the first, let's say, 20, 22 lines of this chapter until after the V'hine Hashem, your day will be a different day. The more we learn Chassidut, the more Hashem becomes a reality. Of course, everybody believes that there's Hashem. We are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, believers, children of believers, especially starting from the coming out of Mitzrayim, when we believed in Hashem, vaya'amen ha'am, we all believed in Hashem. But there are different levels of belief. You can have belief which is a little bit lofty and feel a little removed, not so down to earth. And then you can have belief which really hits home, it really gets permeated within inside of you. So the more we learn about Hashem and how much He is connected to us in a real way, it can become a reality for us. And we can lead our day in such a meaningful way. And that's why it's important to say these lines of Tanya every day, from the beginning of Perek Mem Aleph until top of page 112. Ka'omed lefnei HaMelech. The second line, Ka'omed lefnei HaMelech. Now, we have to think about, the Alter Rebbe continues, Umeiniach. And the Alter Rebbe continues, Umeiniach ha'alyonim v'tachtonim. And Hashem leaves all of those higher and lower worlds for a moment. Umiyached malchuto. And He unifies His kingdom, focuses in Al Amo Yisrael B'chlal, for His nation, Am Yisrael, in a general sense. Ve'alav, and on you and I, and on the individual person, Befrat, in detail. Ki chayav Adam lomar, a person is obligated to say, as it says in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The world was created for me. The entire world, literally, was created for me. I, and you, and everyone in this world, in an individual way, must say every day, at every moment, that the world was created for me. By the little mitzvah that I'm going to do, I can tip the scale, as the Rambam says. I can make the entire world merit the coming of Mashiach. And therefore, no one should underestimate their ability. As the Rebbe once said, that the fact that you have a birthday, on your birthday, what's the celebration? The celebration is that Hashem, this is the day when you were born, that Hashem decided that the world cannot exist without you, without me. And every day we should say this. The fact that we're here, that means that we can make a great impact on the world. Let's continue. V'hu, gam hu, and also this individual, mikabel alav malchuto. We accept upon ourselves Hashem's kingdom. Liyot melech alav, that Hashem should be our king. Ula avdo, this is going to be a key word in the future of this chapter. Ula avdo, and to serve Him. V'la'asot ritzono, and to do Hashem's will. B'chol minei avodat eved, with all different types of work of a servant and a slave. In other words, similar to Rosh Hashanah, where we accept upon ourselves as Am Yisrael, as mankind, by blowing of the shofar, we accept upon ourselves Hashem's kingdom. So too, every single day, every single person must accept upon ourselves Hashem's kingdom. When we do so, then we are telling Hashem that we want to do whatever you say. And then it becomes a reality. It's not just a lofty concept that a person once heard of, but it doesn't really have to do with me. Rather, it becomes a real thing that a person can live with. At every step of the day, it helps us make good decisions. Because we realize that Hashem is watching us. We have an obligation to be subservient to Hashem. And then our entire lives will be hopefully much more dedicated to Hashem. Thank you so much for joining us today.